Hey everybody, welcome back, and thanks for stopping by again. Today we're going to work on the legs and get them milled up and sized properly, and going to attempt cutting the castle joint, which I've also seen as a bridle joint in the top of them. Unfortunately, the video is not going to end as well as I had hoped, but we'll deal with that in the future. So stick around and I hope you enjoy it. Here I have the rest of the cherry lumber milled up in the pieces. I'm going to start making the legs today and the aprons. This board here is 6 inches wide, so I should be able to rip that right in half and get 2 aprons out of that. The legs are going to be approximately 3 inches square at the top, so I'll have to glue several boards together to get that width. So what I'm going to do is kind of rip them all down to about 3 1/4 inches. I'll get them glued up and then I'll do a final cut on them once I have everything glued up. Here I have the lumber milled up for the legs and the aprons. Those are the 4 aprons. Need a little bit of fine trimming yet. And then these are the 4 legs that need to be glued up and trimmed out to final dimensions. So here I am ready to glue up the first leg here. Many times we'll use multiple boards to get a 3-inch or more thickness because lumber 3-inch thick is pretty expensive. So I've got 3 boards here that are about 1 inch piece that will glue these up to get the 3-inch leg. I'm going to glue them up. I'm actually going to apply the glue over here on a couple of horses I have to the side because I'm going to need a lot of glue on these, and I'm sure I'm going to get some drip out before I even get the boards together. Got some plastic here on my table saw just to catch any squeeze out. And the thing I found that works great for a glue spreader are these terrific AARP cards. I hope these folks keep sending these to me because these work great for spreading glue. And the price is right. So let me get set up here and we'll get started. So it may seem a little bit overkill on the clamps, but I wanted to get good squeeze out here when I do the final milling of this wood. I don't want you to be able to see the seam, so I want to make sure that those are really squeezed together well. I'm going to let this set up for a couple hours and then I'll take it out of the clamps and do the rest of the legs. So I have the first leg out of the clamps, and I have to say I'm not real thrilled with how this turned out. I'm going to clean this up a bit, mill it. I'm going to cut this extra piece off here on the table saw and then run it through the joiner and the planer a few times and see how it cleans up. I hope it cleans up nicely because right now I'm not thrilled about it, but let me get started. We'll see how this ends up. So after a few passes through the joiner and then planer, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I'll give it a final sanding yet once we finish milling everything up and getting it to exact size and cutting the slots for the joinery. But overall, I'm pretty happy with that. So here I have the second leg glued up, and it went much more smoothly than the first one. Couple tips I learned, and I should have noticed this the first time around, but I did not. The clamps fell off the edge of the table saw here. So what I did this time around is I put a board here just to help hold them up level. And I just didn't think of it on the first one, but did this time around, and I'll do that on the remaining ones. Going pretty smooth so far. So here the legs are after I ran them through the jointer and planer just to get the boards all evened up. Next thing I'm going to do is to trim off some of this excess at the table saw. And once I get that trimmed off, same with these here. Once I get that trimmed off, then I'm going to bring the legs to their final dimensions as far as thickness. Well, here I have my 4 legs milled up. I've got them milled to about 2 3/4 inch square, and now I need to cut them to length. I'm going to use the compound miter saw here to do that. The first thing I'll do is square up one end, and I set up a small support shelf here for that. I have a line drawn here at 36 inches from the blade. So I will square up one end on each leg, and then I'm going to put a stop block here so that I can lay each leg down and each one will be exactly the same length. Well, I had to stop taping for a bit. The house across the street is for sale, and I don't want to scare off any potential buyers with me making noise out here. So I shut everything down for 15, 20 minutes, whatever they were here for, and it's a good thing I did. I don't know why I had 36 inches for a leg length stuck in my head, but that's what I was cutting the first 2 legs at. I got those done, as you could see, when I had to stop. And I'm in the house for a short bit, and I'm just thinking that sounds like too much, too long. So I remeasure a couple of existing tables I have in the house, and the tabletops are about 30 inches tall. So my legs need to be 28 1/4 inch in length. So I've reset everything up here, and I'm going to recut the first 2 legs I did and then continue on. So it's a good thing that we get interruptions now and then. Let's continue. All right, I have my legs cut to length and real happy with how they turned out. They're all same length, good squareness on them. So the next thing I'm going to do is to cut the top of the legs for the aprons. A lot of times people will use a mortise. It's probably the most common joint used. Had a guy at work recommend, I've seen it called by a couple different names, but most common is called a castle joint. And I'm going to try that. So what I'm going to do is basically cut out the dark portion of the wood here, and then you come down on the sides the same thickness that your aprons are, and then you kind of crisscross them in the wood and lay them down in there. Now I've never done this joint before, so I'm going to practice on one of these cutoffs I have, and we'll see how it goes. Here I've started laying out my cut lines, as you can see here on two sides. I am going to initially start drilling a hole at the bottom here through the wood, and then through this side for the beginning of the cuts. Today I'm going to start cutting the castle joint into the top of the wood. I'm going to try my practice piece first before I do the actual legs, just so I can get a little experience and maybe learn a few tricks. So I'm going to be cutting these joints by hand today. Probably the best way to do it would be to use a bandsaw. And I happen to have a bandsaw, but I bought it about maybe 9 years ago. And not that I'm a procrastinator or anything, but let me show you my bandsaw real quick. It's sitting over here against the wall, and I'll get around to assembling it one of these days. Just haven't really had much need for one because I've mainly built smaller stuff. So I'm going to try to cut these by hand, and if that proves to be a disaster, then that's why I'm doing it in a test leg. If I'm not able to cut it by hand, then I'll figure out another avenue. I might take it over to one of my buddies who has a bandsaw. Probably should be doing that anyway, but I really hate to bother him if I don't have to. So let me get started on these practice cuts, and we'll see how it goes. So here's what I'm thinking. I have a fence clamped down to my drill press table, and I've got a 5/8 inch Forstner bit in here, and I've got it centered on my block of wood. So if I drill those out, flip it, drill these out, it should be center going in both ways. I'll have to clean up the edging a little bit with a chisel, maybe some sandpaper, but that's what I'm going to initially try and see how it goes. So I set my drill press to run at 450 RPM. That's the recommended speed for the bit and the wood I'm doing. So let's get started on this. All right, the drill's not going all the way through, so I'm going to set up a stop block at the end so I can flip that over and come in from the other side. Well, as you can see here, that didn't go so well. I've got some tear outs here on the corners. Down inside there it's just really rough and kind of nasty looking. So I'm going to have to figure out a plan B and try something else. Well, I got a feeling this video is starting to get a little bit long, so I figured this was a good breaking point. So I hope you enjoyed that video. It didn't turn out quite like I would have liked, but we'll figure out a plan B soon and hopefully have that up, cover that in the next video for you. And as always, I appreciate you stopping by and watching my videos, and I hope to see you on the next one. Take care.